Today we're looking at 5 pedals that I think are underappreciated in the alt, shoegaze, indie space, and hopefully after today's video you'll either find out some new pedals or you might pick up one of those old pedals that you haven't used in a while. Now before we start, these aren't like super rare obscure pedals that you've probably never heard of, but I just think they're awesome pedals that don't get enough attention, or even some get the wrong attention. Now I'm not about to make you watch this whole video to discover what those 5 pedals are, so here we go. First up, the Digitech Whammy. Second, we've got the Electro Harmonix Neoclone. Next, we've got the Line 6 Verbzilla, the classic DS1, and finally the Electro Harmonix Hog. So we're going to go through each of these pedals, the famous bands and guitarists that have used them, and then how I've found the best way that I use them, and why I think they're so important to be on this list. When it comes to alternative and shoegaze music, you're not necessarily looking for like the best overdrive or distortion sound like you might in like blues or metal or something, where you're just basically trying to find something really crisp and clear that's going to allow your like riffs and stuff to really shine through. A lot of alternative and shoegaze music's about finding weird stuff that you can make soundscapes of, and I think this first pedal really encapsulates that. It is the Digitech Whammy. This pedal has probably been all over some of your favourite alt records. I mean, Radiohead use it all the time, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine uses it a lot, and apparently Kevin Shields even used it on the self-titled album tour. The Whammy is a pitch shifting pedal that was developed by Digitech in 1989, and it was the first widely used pitch shifting pedal that could use a foot switch to change the pitch of the sound. It was designed to be able to do the same effects that you'd have on your vibrato, like on your Jazzmaster or your Strat or something, but with like a massively increased range and without the tuning issues that you get from really hammering your whammy bar. But I don't think that's the only thing that the pedal does. Just adding those octaves or harmonies on just kind of adds this weird sound that you can, when you put it through other effects and stuff, it can sound amazing, but even on its own it has this weird kind of tonality to it. And I think that's probably how Johnny Greenwood uses it, particularly in the song My Iron Lung, which kind of sounds a little bit like this. I think that sounded pretty close to what he was doing. And basically what I was doing there is I had it on the octave up setting, just the 1 octave up, and the pedal was basically like that, so it was completely 1 octave up, but it just gives it this kind of harsh sound that sounds really cool, especially when you're playing like angsty notes like is in that track. But I would say probably the most famous user of this pedal is Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. And he uses it in, I guess, what would be described as a conventional way for this pedal. Like he's using the pitch shifting to go right up and down. And in the song Killing in the Name, the solo is basically just a whammy doing that. And he's doing this sort of thing. I really wish that I had written something like that. It's just so cool. And I think that's testament to how you can use pedals like this to really shape a sound that probably no one was really doing before that, maybe. Now, generally, the way I like to use this is kind of how Johnny Greenwood uses it, and especially going into reverbs and stuff, just those octaves up can create really cool ethereal sounds that you wouldn't get just from like the shimmer inbuilt into something like the Strymon. But for this video, I really wanted to mess about with doing that Tom Morello style like solo-y thing. Call it a solo. I'm not sure that my iffy guitar playing is actually going to be worth that, but I basically messed about with a track that I'd used for another video and just put a little lead line over the top with the whammy. The mic we're going to be using today is the Cascade Fathead. It's a ribbon microphone, which is actually my favourite kind of mic for guitars, but they're normally like ridiculously expensive. But the Cascade Fathead is actually not too bad. I think this thing's like 200 quid or something, which I know is fairly expensive when you could probably buy a 57 for like £80, but it's a really good mic, and if you've got the luxury of being able to spend out on a ribbon, I'd go for one of these. That was really fun to play, and I think in future I'm going to use the whammy in that way more as well. Hopefully that highlights how much of a cool pedal that thing really is. Okay, so I think let's move on to the second pedal in our list. and that is going to be the Electro Harmonix Neoclone. I'm sorry about the tape on the top. This isn't actually my pedal, this is the other guitarist in my band, and I don't want to rip off his settings. Don't be fooled by it being part of the Nano series, because this thing is a beast. I know it's tiny and it'll fit in your pedal board well, but this little analog chorus is truly, truly good. I think the reason it maybe gets overlooked is because of this pedal. Basically, its bigger brother. It's the small clone, probably one of the most famous choruses of all time, and it's used by like Nirvana and stuff. So of course, the other little brother that they brought out is probably not going to have as much acclaim, but essentially they're the same pedal. This is just a smaller version, so actually it does fit in your pedal board better. But I mean, I've got this one, and actually it's even more annoying because the input's not the normal sort of input, it's the small input. So I'd rather probably have this one. Now I wanted to basically show you how similar they are to each other, because they both give this squelchy, watery chorus that I personally don't think I've heard from other chorus effects, and why I love these pedals so much. I mean, what did you think? I think to my ears, they sound so similar to each other that I couldn't tell the difference. So really, I mean, this is cheaper as well. This thing's like 60 quid and this is like 85 or something. So basically the only reason to get this one and not this one is because of how it looks. I mean, there's literally no pluses. This fits in your pedal board easier too. Just a quick one before we move on. And this is a mistake that we've made in my band. That pedal isn't to be confused with the Neoclone, which is based on the clone theory chorus. And in my opinion, it's not the best pedal. It's super noisy and it just sounds nowhere near as good as the Neoclone or the small clone. And the trouble is they basically look identical. So just make sure if you are going to get one of these, it's the Neoclone and not the Neoclone. Unless of course you think that that one sounds better, and then go ahead. Okay, so pedal 3 might actually be a little bit more obscure. Of all the gigs I've played, and I've played a lot of touring gigs now, I've never seen this thing in another person's pedal board. And again, it's actually the other guitarist in my band's pedal. It's not mine, but it's the Line 6 Verbzilla. I don't know why they called it the Verbzilla. It's a pretty cool name. It's basically a stereo reverb, and it was made in 2008. So I imagine that was kind of early for those sort of digital reverbs. Probably one of the most famous that's knocking about now is the Strymon Big Sky, and that came out in 2013. So I guess this was early to the market. Now when I was researching for this video, I noticed that Josh Scott from JHS Pedals actually picked this as one of his favourite reverbs, which is nuts because I had no idea that they even sold that many and whether people even knew about this pedal. And I think the reason he picked it was for this ducking mode that it's got. Basically the pedal has 11 different modes and one of them is called ducking. And I guess it's almost side chaining to your guitar. So when your guitar signal plays, the reverb ducks out and then comes back when you stop playing. And it kind of gets out of the way of your playing and then adds the tail after, which I think sounds really cool. While I do think that sounds awesome, there's one setting on this pedal that just blows everything away, in my opinion, and it's the Octo setting. It's basically like the shimmer reverbs that you'd hear on the Strymon Blue Sky or the Big Sky or whatever, but I think it has like a different tonality to it, and where I think it can really excel is with like shoegazy lead lines. Basically, if you put some sort of distortion or fuzz after it, it just creates this insane sound that I haven't heard anywhere else. So what I've done here is I've just put the DS1 after it and just turned up the gain a little, and this thing just sounds so cool. It sounds like it's like breaking the octaves. My band have been using that sound loads at the moment for our lead lines, and I just think it sounds so awesome. And probably if I was to pick one pedal on this list of 5 that would be my favourite, it would probably actually be that one. But I think we're going to have to move on to pedal number 4 now, and that is going to be the Boss DS1. Now this thing is basically on this list, not because I think it's necessarily underrated, I think it's more just underappreciated. I made a video that you can actually watch here, and it was basically the Boss DS1 versus the Rat. And I think that I didn't do the DS1 justice. Weirdly to me, this pedal seems to respond to different amps more than, say, other pedals do. And so I wanted to add this to this video to hopefully get a better sound from it than I got before. Now I'm sure you know that this pedal has been the driving force behind some of the best alt and indie records ever made, including, Kurt Cobain used this thing, probably on Nevermind. And because this thing's so cheap as well, you're getting like an amazing pedal for not very much money. Anyway, let's see if we can get an even better sound out of this thing in this video. See, I think that thing sounded pretty cool there. There were some bands that were around in the Britpop era that basically went under the radar themselves, and there was one called Long Pigs, and that kind of chord progression that I was playing there would have been something that they would have done. You're basically using a major instead of where a minor should be, and it really does, in my mind, have that kind of British Britpoppy feel to it. But anyway, I think that the DS1 really excelled there. Okay, so we've made it down to the last pedal in our list. This is number 5, and this again is a little bit of a weird one. It's the Electro Harmonix Hog. Why would they call a pedal the Hog, you ask? Well, it actually stands for Harmonic Octave Generator, and it's the brother of the Pog, which is the Polyphonic Octave Generator. And I actually thought that this pedal came first, but apparently it didn't. The Pog did first, and this followed up in 2008. And it basically offered what the Pog did, but with loads of extra little tonal changes. What the Hog gives you is at first an input gain, and then you get like a dry signal, and then you get 2 octaves down, 1 octave down, your regular signal, and then you start going up. And each octave up then has an octave and a fifth as well. So you can go up like, I think it's 4 octaves in total, which is awesome. Now, I never actually use those 2 last ones because I think they sound a little bit ridiculous. But on synths and stuff, you can probably use them and they sound really cool. And then here you have an envelope, which is triggered by this switch. It's basically like a synth envelope. It changes the attack of stuff, and it can sound cool, but I don't really like it because I like to have that attack still there. And then at the end here, you have the filter, which obviously just acts as a filter. And then you have these different expression bits here at the top, which are triggered by this foot switch here. Now also, when this pedal first came out, this is the foot switch. It's like 6 different presets that you can save, but this thing's like as big as the pedal. It's really cool. Unfortunately, there was tape on it, and when I've taken it off, it's basically like ripped all the paintwork off. But I never actually use this preset thing because, it's just too big to fit in a board. Well, too big to fit in my board anyway. Now, the reason I actually bought this pedal was because of a band called The Horrors. I absolutely love that band. And when I love a band, I just get obsessed with what gear they're using and how they use it and stuff. And so on their second album, Primary Colours, which came out in 2009, you should go and listen to it. It's like amazing. Post-punky Joy Division stuff, but a little bit more aggressive and more actually kind of punky and angsty in its delivery. But anyway, they used to get these weird organ sounds that sounded like it was an organ, but it wasn't, because it was kind of like discordant and like a bit weird. And it turns out that the guitarist used the Hog. So immediately, I spent time searching all over the internet and managed to track one down, and I've had it ever since. Now, the thing it does really well is that kind of weird organ sound, but like I said, it doesn't sound like you're just playing an organ. It sounds like a guitar that's turned into an organ, which makes it sound 10 times cooler. And if you just play chords and stuff with this on its own, it can sound super cool. And then I mentioned before, my favourite expression mode is the freeze one, and you hold that on and it can just do some really cool stuff. But where I think this thing really comes into its own is with some other effects. So here I've added a little bit of modulation delay and some reverb, and then I've doubled it up, and this is what it sounds like. Now, I know there is some similarities to the Digitech Whammy, like when you put it on the octave up, you can get the same sort of sounds. And actually in a live set, there's a couple of songs that I use this on, but live I can kind of get a similar enough sound from the Digitech Whammy so that I don't have to take two ridiculously massive, like, expression effects out with me. But I do think it offers something completely different, and I haven't heard that same effect from another pedal yet. Okay, so there you have it. That completes my list of 5 pedals that I think are super unappreciated in the alt indie shoegaze space, that I think if you add some of these to your board, you're going to open up some new sonic possibilities. What pedals would you add to this list? Let me know down in the comments. Give us a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this, and watch this video next. And until next time, keep on making noises.